some introductions for those that don't mind identifying themselves, or you can list who you are within the chat, particularly if you're a member of the public and would like to, consider ways of continuing your connection with the commission or supporting roles that you may have. So I will start with myself. I am David Armenti. I am currently serving as a commissioner as well as the chair of this committee. And my actual job is here at the Maryland Center for History and Culture as the Vice President of Education and Engagement. So again, whoever feels comfortable verbally identifying themselves, please do so.
Everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm Brett Tyler, and I am with Heritage Associates. We are the contracted researchers for the MLRTC, and we work very closely with David and Christopher.
And I'm Donna Hawley. I'm Brett's favorite sister.
And I'm Chris Haley, Donna Hawley's former boyfriend, but it's been rough over the years, so we do what we can. I'm director of the study, The Legacy of Slavery in Maryland, and reference research and outreach at the Maryland State Archives. I'm a commissioner representing the Maryland State Archives.
I'm Nick Ferry. I am the representative on the commission for the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, and I chair the Reconciliation Committee, but I'm here to support and learn and do what I can to help out. And my day job is the institutional JEDI officer, that's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, California.
Is that your cousin? No, Michelle, I used to work with. They can't meet.
And a few folks have identified themselves in the chat. Thank you so much. And I see at least one other commissioner, as well as one of our Office of the Attorney General supporting staff as well. So again, thank you everyone for joining us, and feel free to, again, this is a public forum and discussion. So even if you are not listed in the agenda, feel free to throw up your hand, interject however you feel comfortable. Michelle, did you want to introduce yourself? Or if not, that's quite all right.
If she can unmute. Well, sorry. I'm Kristen McFarland. I am an assistant attorney general assigned to the commission. And I just wanted to pop in and just, support you guys. I don't think that I have, I know it's been a while since there's been a research committee meeting, but I don't think I've joined one in the past. It's my hope that either myself or Sophie or Jordana can participate in or at least join the committee meetings going forward. So I'm going to talk to the rest of the staff over at OAG internally and try to see if we can get someone always covering the committee meetings. Michelle Coles, I don't know if you were trying to talk or you can get off mute. Okay.
Sorry about that. I was having technical difficulties. The settings weren't set up in my phone so that it had access to my mic, but I had to redo it. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Coles. I am going to be a new member on the commission, representing the public. And I am a former civil rights attorney at the Justice Department and also an author of books about Black history for young adults. So I'm really excited about the work you guys are doing, excited to join, and just wanted to join in today to learn more about what everyone was working on. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. And we're so excited to have you as well, Michelle. And something that we will make a point of reiterating to the full commission is that committee membership is not set in stone based on what maybe you have done in previous years, or especially if you're a newer commissioner or brand new commissioner. We would like to see folks in at least one committee, but that's kind of personal discretion to the extent that you think your skills and connections, et cetera, would best support the work. So touch base with Chris and myself. Also, Nick represented on the call with the reconciliation committee. So let us know if you have any questions about the possible roles and where it makes most sense to land.
Thank you.
So as far as what I have set on the agenda, and again, I welcome any interruptions with perhaps more pressing business, although we do also have a new business agenda item more toward the end of our hour. So I have in here review coordination and workflow process. So I think one of the things that's kind of a major task of the research committee is of course compiling research materials, whether that be primary sources that have been either collected by our colleagues at Heritage Associates, commissioners themselves, other associated researchers, whether they be with the Memorial Project, local coalitions, or students. There are a lot of different people that are working on creating a more full and truthful story around the victims, their families, and the events that led up to these crimes that we are covering as a commission. So pulling all of that information together has been I'd say a continual challenge, and one where, again, with so many different people involved, we want to make sure that things are not getting kind of left out or lost within the process. So part of what I want to kind of get across here today, and reiterate, even to some of those who have been involved for some time, is how we are trying the workflow that we have tried to set up with that. And I'm also going to lean on our colleague Chris Haley to discuss, from the Maryland State Archives perspective, being the website host currently, as well as one of the repositories that has a lot of the material that we're concerned with, as well as the one that's hosting the case studies that are kind of our central database at this point for individual stories and all the primary and secondary sources attached to them. So we'll definitely want to hear his perspective and that of the archives as well. But just generally speaking, the commission, as well as this committee in particular, have been utilizing a Google Drive to collect and compile primary and secondary source material. And I'm happy to provide that link to any internal commissioners and/or supporting staff. It has been, I will admit, there's been a little bit of trickiness to the ownership quote of the Google Drive and giving permissions for people to submit materials and sources. But again, if anybody has had either issues with accessing what is already in that drive, or is somebody who is on the committee or otherwise that would like to submit primary and secondary source materials, please touch base with me, and I'd be happy to kind of try to coordinate that process a little bit better. So the purpose of the Google Drive is to just be kind of a first stop for materials, again, whether they be primary source materials. A lot of that has been newspaper articles, some of which were already attached to the Maryland State Archives created case studies of the lynching victims. Some have also been recovered, again, by students or individuals within the commission who have been working through other digital repositories like Chronicling America on the Library of Congress, and being able to see more of the kind of the national and even international scope of how some of the cases in Maryland were covered. So newspaper archives, as well as things like vital records, again, many derived from the Maryland State Archives collection, those being death records, marriage records, court records, and genealogically based sources. So the list I'm giving is not exhaustive, but just so we have a sense of the types of materials we're talking about, especially from Heritage Associates. There have been substantial genealogical resources compiled that are, whether they be from Ancestry, census records, other places that compile census material, and things along those lines. So as we're constructing not only the stories of what happened in the events, but also the getting background about the individuals, their families, etc. Those are the types of materials that we're looking for and continually compiling. Yes, Brett.
Chris may cover this, or perhaps we could talk offline. But one of the questions I have is about census records. We have a huge number of census records that we've uncovered as part of our research. Some going back to, obviously, prior to the incidents in question and continuing up until 1950 in some cases, not all cases. And I guess I would like clarity about those census records being uploaded, because what they do is they prove the genealogical link, say, to an alleged assault victim's descendants. So we may be able to trace a descendant from their birth in 1950 all the way back to their family history in 1840. And it would be helpful if we had some clarity on whether or not that uploading that information is helpful at all.
It is.
Okay, Chris.
Sometimes when you give long answers, it's like you're trying to obfuscate or something like that. You're trying to get around the bit. It's like, no, it is. Anything that you find, I mean, certainly it's outside of the actual parameters of the grant, which of course is 1854 to 1933. But in and of itself, anything that we find that relates to those victims or perpetrators within that time frame is pertinent, and getting access to those documents, which we would probably, as a census record, we probably would save as a PDF, so that there would be no problem with future changing in linkage. Then we would definitely add it to the subsequent case studies or biographies that we make on whichever individual it is.
All right, thank you for that. We'll get on it.
Oh,
Go ahead, Donna.
I have a related question. One of the things that I've been doing as I've had contact with people who are related to, but not necessarily descended from, the lynching victims, is to try to establish how they are related. And so I'm asking some of these people for the genealogical research that they've done. And I'm also trying to confirm that they really are related to our victims. It's safe to assume that you would want that genealogical information included in the Google Drive as well.
Yes, I think when you go that, this isn't the most easy way to say it. When you go that far, which is of course what we'd like to have, then certainly we want to make sure that there's permission granted by the donor that they are fine with this, because anything that we're putting on the Google Drive in and of itself is something that prospectively and even legally should be made available at some point publicly. But we want to make so that they're aware of that, so that they can either say yes or no.
All right.
To that.
Thank you.
Sure.
I was going to say the exact same thing, that the Google Drive is basically, for the internal commission work, that's kind of the first step for, it doesn't automatically get displayed to anybody outside of our colleagues. So if there is some sort of stipulation put on material shared with you, like, especially if it is more kind of private for family research, however, they still want it to support perhaps our outreach or our ability to engage descendants in a public hearing, but they don't necessarily want it presented in perpetuity on the website, then yeah, that sort of information would be helpful to attach to it as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And Chris, just to confirm, you said that PDF is the ideal file type for uploading for materials that would ultimately be uploaded to a MSA hosted case study.
Yes. And that's specifically because you never know where that the host site of whatever material that is, if there might be some subsequent issue with their linkages or with their if they're private, which is not a great optimum for us to take as a source, but if they stop paying their URL, start paying the domain fee, and all of a sudden it's disconnected, and that's what we were linking to, and so then we can't link to it. So the idea is that in confirming whatever the document is, it's saved as a PDF, so then we can save it within our internal drive, so that there won't be an issue with linkage it moving forward.
Great, thank you. And maybe we can show an example of one of the case studies in the second half of our hour here, and even some of the things that have been recently uploaded and linked to supplement some of the stories. So yes, so again, even though this is a public meeting, there are certain processes that start internal, and that includes some of this compilation, and this body, this committee would also have a role in vetting, so to speak, what of those materials on the Google Drive are confirmed, corroborated to be in support of the case studies and the truth telling that we are putting forth, but also what things are worthwhile to put on there, considering the the time and capacity that it takes to do this sort of updating. We would want to prioritize what materials we're pushing out, because we ultimately we're probably talking about thousands of documents, if not at least hundreds that are attached to these various cases. So we want to be cognizant of that portion as well. So for those who are more within the public realm, who we welcome, of course, as collaborators within this research work, I am going to drop a few email addresses within the chat, just so you know where to get to us. But members of the public are, of course, welcome to provide, whether it is primary source material, maybe they have ideas or leads on genealogical connections related to the families and victims that we are addressing, or you might be a member of the public who is, for example, a student within a public history course that's maybe studying the commission or is working alongside a commissioner, and have found primary or secondary source materials. So I would say that there are a couple of different ways as a member of the public to contribute in that way, which would be, again, starting with email. I think that's the best way to go to not only start a conversation about a role, but also, being able to attach those materials or have a direct line to Chris or myself to make sure that those things land in the right place. So as mentioned, I will put my email address in the chat, and then what I believe to be the commission address, that's mltrc@maryland.gov, right, Chris?
Yes.
Yes. So starting with either of those places, that would ensure that we're in contact, and if there's say there's a bulk upload of materials, you probably don't want to do that all over email, but we could work with a member of the public to coordinate that transfer, especially if especially if they have multiple items that they would like to send that doesn't go within one email. For the public as well, considering that we are going to, I believe we've set these as monthly meetings. Did we say monthly? Yes, monthly. So the first Monday of each month at 3 p.m. This will be our standard time, barring holidays and such. So we'll make sure to have those updates. But this is also the forum as a member of the public to log in, share, talk about what connection or what findings you might have. And that can also be the beginnings of a conversation that can go offline or into a smaller group as needed. So we thank those who have contributed already. And again, a lot of the progress that's been made has been due to the various collaborators from various entities. So again, we just want to make sure that work is not lost, doesn't go out into the ether, but it kind of lands in the right place, and we can continue that work of updating and clarifying, so we have a central repository for that information. So I think in this discussion, I may have stepped on a decent amount of what you might have said from the MSA perspective, Chris, but there's
so
at least
done. I'm so done right now.
But you can take it from here as far as how to best utilize and work with the archives and the uploader. So I will shut up.
Okay, thanks, David. Everything David said is right on, and within the correct realm of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to grab, sort, and subsequently preserve and make accessible any records that you may think or find or have or know of which exist pertaining to any of the lynchings which we have documented to this point, or any lynchings that you may have heard of and you find which we do not have listed on the Maryland Judge Lynch's Court page and or on the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project page, primarily within the time, again, of our legal mandate, which is 1854 to 1933. But certainly we are excited to find whichever other events or occurrences of this type that occurred in Maryland at any time that you may find it. So certainly we're not exclusive to just those dates. It's just our focus is those dates or within the parameter of those years. I did just include my email as well, chris.haley@maryland.gov, so that if you are sending some material to us via email, then do please do the MLTRC, which stands for Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission at maryland.gov, as well as David's email and my email, to make sure it gets to us. And also, I would ask that you make sure that somewhere within your heading for that email, it does say Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I say that because there's so many different emails that have come in on this topic to the page MLTRC, and also subsequent to that, that it's challenging to shift through all of them to make sure that you don't miss anything. Because some Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation emails we have may be about a press event that's going on, or maybe about a correspondence between commissioners, or correspondence between constituents from a local Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation, Maryland Lynching Memorial Project coalition itself. So it can be very hard to sift through them all. So if you were to say Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission donation, that would be a wonderful thing to see, because when subsequently we try to make sure that we've caught everything, we could put in those words with quotation marks and hopefully capture them all. So please keep that in mind. Try to do that. We have the uploader in place, which is on the Contact Us portion of the Maryland Truth and Reconciliation Commission page. However, we have not found many people to use it, to be totally truthful. So again, as David said, if you find something that you think is of potential merit to the commission, then please use my email, David's email, and the MLTRC, and we will certainly get that as well. So in other words, there's as David said, somewhat wonky situation where there's forms that go back and forth using the uploader. If you don't want to do that, if you feel like it's more specific to your goals to just send it to us by the other email, please feel free to do so. We began with this process before the pandemic. We thought people would be coming in person, and then the pandemic happened, and obviously that was really a no-go. We created this whole internal digital accessibility during the pandemic, and it was very hard to really even communicate with people how that would work and then how we could show what happened. So we're very aware of that, and encourage you to reach out to us in whichever way you can. That said, what we will ultimately do is that we will make the materials with permission available within our site, and as much as possible, and I think to the fullest degree, available on the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission site as well, to link to the individuals to which it specifically pertains, and also in the generalities of different sections or regions of the state, which is to say Prince George's County or Kent County or Caroline County, wherever those lynchings occur. We will have those so that you can look at them in different ways depending on what your interest or where your interest sits as far as this study goes. I would say there's no bit of information that you feel is relevant that we would say no to. We just would always want there to be a source attached to it. Even if that source is oral history, like your family says, or there's been talk, or there was always an anecdotal account of a relative who participated in one of these events, and or someone who disappeared, and we believe they disappeared because they were subject to one of these atrocities. That is also valid to us. Subsequent to that, as David mentioned, we would want to vet that source. Even if the vet is a descendant of someone said this happened, then we'd want to know, well, who was it who said that? I mean, maybe that sounds too picky, but at some point we have to get something that validates that there's a source for this information, and then that can then also be included among whichever case study that it pertains to. I guess with that, let me see if I could try to show you an example of how we do post these such information that we find. One of the things we did recently, which I think I shared in a recent general staff or general Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, was a project where we had interns over the summer look through correspondences from the governor's office between Secretary of State, between attorney generals, between individuals, where we looked among, quite frankly, thousands of pieces of paper, thousands of letters or what have you, to see if there was any mention of any lynchings or lynching associated events or references. And so we were able to find some, and this is in regards to an individual whose name was Wright Smith, who fell victim to a lynching in 1898. So let me see if I can share my screen and get this for you to see.
And if I
This
could
is-
just interject real
Go
quick,
ahead.
Chris, what you mentioned about perhaps oral history as a corroborative piece of material, that's something we can also share with heritage associates and work with them on kind of the genealogical tracking. So it's, one piece of information might not be the be all end all. It could be the start for further investigation and collaborating with that member of the public if they are willing. So
Yes.
just wanted to make that note as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, is this visible? Do we all see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So here's the introductory page. This is we have many of these. We have these for each of the persons that we have listed, a case study, and also we can call it a bio. For Wright Smith, who was lynched in Annapolis, October 5th, 1898, of the quadrant of information that we have set here, biography it could be a variable length depending on how much information the person who drafted this text felt it was pertinent to include, is written on this page with some links that we felt, or that the writer feels or felt, informed the context of this draft that was written. Then one would go back. Actually, I can do it two ways. This is to the newspaper. And as I said before, we saved a PDF of this newspaper so that we wouldn't have to worry about the link to the actual newspaper being broken at some point because of what have you. So now it's say specific to this case study. And on this page, you can make it larger. So of course it's easier for you to read the print. Attacked by a Negro, 2 women compelled to fight for their lives in Anne Arundel County. And then you can get out of that. And then we go to a copy of the death certificate for Wright Smith, which is in our special collection. This was an original file, so we scanned it and have made it available online with his case study. And as you see, Wright Smith, Annapolis, Anne Arundel County, date 8/10/5, age, it looks like that's 56 to my eyes. And then lynched, reported by Advertiser, Annapolis, October 6th. Now, another thing that we have as an attachment here, which I wanted to show you under sources, and this is what we found during just this past summer with the help of the interns. Actually, the interns who've helped us from the George Mason University and also the University of Maryland, College Park, and St. John's campus, who all work together to some degree reviewing these materials, is, as I mentioned, with the Governor's General File. These are letters that were written back and forth. This date is 1899. I think it's actually 1889, actually, January 1st, 31st. And you see in the midst of this letter, dear sir, pardon me for writing to you, but as I know that there will be service for one or more detectives at the state banquet, and you was so kind to answer my letter some time ago, if you remember reference to the parties who lynched the colored man in Annapolis, and would write to you on this occasion to ask if you could not help me in this matter. I can give you the best reference, Mr. William Stone and Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Benjamin Andrews and many others. And as I am deserving to belong to your party and don't ask for anything, only in my line of business, hope you will give this some consideration. This person is asking for work to help uncover the parties who were involved with that lynching. And here are some other letters to Governor Lowndes, Lynchers of Wright Smith, the colored man who was lynched last night. And as I'm in the detective business and have been very successful in a great many cases, I will simply mention one particular case, and that is a case of the arrest and conviction of I think this says Woolly Gullies, who desecrated the tombstones and monuments in the river, I think that's River Kiev Cemetery, and more of that letter. So that's just an example, as David was mentioning, that when you send the materials to us, that is where they will ultimately be put on the Maryland State Archives website, pertinent to whoever the individual is that it concerns. So yeah, I think that's it. Not to make it too complicated, but again, most importantly, if you send anything to us, please make sure it has Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission and donation on it, and that would be very helpful to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. And I know one of the other Anne Arundel County cases, King Johnson has a ton of material attached to it, partially because it also got private investigations into it that I believe had some coordination with state government officials. But that's the folder that I'm currently looking at in the Google Drive. And one of the most fascinating pieces of that was that there was actually a Black detective who went undercover to to support that investigation, which is just a pretty incredible fact wherever that might occur, let alone within these kind of extreme circumstances. So yeah, just there's always so much to add to it that we want to be continually going through that process. And the other thing, so either for newer commissioners or members of the public, we've mentioned the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project several times, as well as its local county affiliates. So these are also our colleagues and collaborators, but not the same organization, not a part of the commission, but an associated body that does similar or aligned work with the commission. So we do have collaborative relationships with folks, whether it is within Prince George's County or Frederick County, these groups that have been formed, who may also have their own researchers, genealogists who want to collaborate with us, or are doing their own work that they want to keep internal, which is their discretion as well. So just that piece of information that that's another one of our major partners in this work, and that's also where some of the materials or additional information has been funneled from, and we want to solicit that and keep those relationships strong as well. And just another note as we move into the Heritage Associates section, if they have any new discoveries or questions for our committee to help guide that process, I will also say that this question has come up from some of our collaborators as well as within the commission itself. How are we prioritizing what work is on the plate of our commissioners as well as our contracted staff? And it is, I guess my best answer would be that it's kind of a fluid situation. We of course have the mandate to address all of these at least 38 racial terror lynchings that occurred across the state of Maryland, but we can't do all of them. Can't give concerted effort to all of them at the same time. So there have been there has been at times prioritization given to either a county's cases where we know we have a public hearing already scheduled for them, so we want to have the most, that is kind of fast tracked, wanting to have the most full and complete story. That is not to the exclusion of work on other counties. So I guess maybe the best way to summarize it is that, you know, we are working on all of the counties and all of these case studies, but some of them might rise and fall in prioritization depending on whether there are events going on, whether collaborators have come to us more recently and, you know, with a cache of materials that would lead to more work being put in. But none of those things are set in stone. There's not a particular schedule that's guiding, we're going to address this in this month, or anything along those lines. So just wanted to clarify that component as well, as we move forward. All right, Brett, Donna, is there, I know I had your most recent update in Excel form, primarily looking at I believe the genealogical research and some of the threads that you've been pulling. Was there anything that you wanted to highlight or put forth questions to the committee here?
I
Yes,
wanted to share, ladies first.
okay.
I wanted to share that after about 4 months, we finally received Wright Smith's wife's application for pension as a result of his service in the Civil War. And initially I was disappointed. Well, first of all, she didn't get the pension because she couldn't document for certain which regiment and unit he had served in. But then I noticed that one of the people who witnessed her signature was a woman named Annie Smith. So I'll be researching her to see if she's related to Wright Smith in any way. And hopefully she's got some descendants and we'll be able to connect with some people. The other little piece of information that came out of that military pension application was the maiden name for his Wright Smith's wife, Margaret. She was Margaret Davy. So I'll be researching her as well. Hopefully we can track down some relatives by marriage that way.
You done?
Well,
I think it's something else.
Thank you so much. And that's, I mean, that's fascinating in and of itself that we know, and I believe that that there may have been a few other lynching victims who were also veterans of the United States Civil War, serving within the colored troops. And yeah. I don't know if that had already been relayed to Chris. I don't know if he found the pension record or if that was something you found independently, but I know that the State Archives has also had some foundational work on documenting Maryland's United States Colored Troops veterans. So that's an exciting development, and I'll look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Donna, you had said prior to the meeting, and I can't recall what it was. It was something else I thought you wanted to share with the research committee. Was it
you're talking about our partnership with UGS?
Yes. Okay.
I'm a member of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, and they publish an annual journal and a quarterly newsletter. In one of their newsletters, they published a list of the names of everybody that we identified as having been a racial terror lynching victim. But now we've got a new project going, and they have agreed that periodically, at our discretion, we can send in articles about the men we're researching, and they will feature them in the newsletter. I want to start with James Carroll, because I know Frederick County will be coming up soon. Is that correct? And then I think it was yesterday I noticed through an old newspaper article that descendants of John Biggis and James Bowens of Frederick County have already been identified. So we're going to focus on looking for, with the help of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, descendants of James Carroll. Apparently he had no children. I found no siblings. I know he was James Carroll Jr. So I'll be writing up something to go in the next newsletter for the OGS Journal.
The only thing I would add is sort of implied by Donna's research. We're focusing on the genealogies of the lynching victims, as well as the alleged assault victims, and in the recent cases, people who were involved in the judicial process, either the arresting officers or the magistrates. And we can talk at another time about how wide or narrow we want to make the scope of our research for those kinds of people who were related to the incident. We have had some good results lately, and I'll use the alleged victim of James Carroll, who was lynched in 1879. The alleged victim was Emily Regina Thomas. Her maiden name was Trundell, but we have documented her family quite thoroughly and found at least 3 descendants that we know are alive, and we have their state of residence and sometimes their actual address and phone numbers. So we've had a lot of success with that family. We've had similar success with Henry Volkman, who was one of the officers who arrested James Carroll. I believe it was in Georgetown, but we found what appears to be 1 or 2 descendants of the Henry Volkman. So that's the path we're going down. We kind of split our resources into genealogy for the lynch victims and genealogy for the associated people, the assault victims and the people who are otherwise involved. So obviously we're having a little more success with the assault victims' families and the associated people than we are with the lynch victims. But that's where our focus is, and that's where we'll continue to coordinate with you and make sure we're on the right track.
So a few things I'll say to that. We are in active conversation with the Frederick County Coalition, myself, Dr. Nick Creary, and our new project manager, Jordana Claiborne, have had 2 conversations with them, and I believe there will be one more scheduled for next week. So we are talking about scheduling a public hearing in 2024. There's not been a date set, but that is kind of the hopeful intention of these conversations. And, you know, within that, if there are any specific questions that we should ask them about, you know, coordination with either genealogical research that's been done. And I have asked them that general question, like,
Yes.
Is there anything you want us to take back to the commission and our contracted colleagues to pursue? But if it's something like, you know, something specific to John Biggis that you either caught wind of or thought that somebody else had mentioned, then those are things that we can help clarify in those conversations too. So please do update me there. And I was also wondering, is there a digital version of the OGS newsletters? And is that something that we might want to, you know, promote more widely with the commission kind of stamp attached to it? You know, I'm happy to see it getting out there, but we also want to, you know, be a part of that process as we can.
There is a digital version. available only to members and organizations that subscribe. What was the second part?
Can you send that to him, Donna? A copy to him?
Sure. I can scan it. I can either send what I write or I can scan it when it's published and send
Okay.
it.
Yeah, either one of those. And I think, and we can also refer that to the commission leadership to say, is this, because we've talked a lot about using the media and marketing
Mhm.
and kind of the lack thereof with our available staffing. So whatever these kind of free outlets are, that can support our work in any way, I think we want to lift that up and think about those strategies.
Okay.
Chris's hand is raised.
We certainly would like a copy of whatever you guys write, whatever you submit, because that can be added to the archive of even if you were separate from the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We are trying to gather all the different articles that have been written about the commission, such as notations of when there's been an event by the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project and or by our own commission. So certainly anything you write, we really would want to get a copy of as well. And you could send that to David and myself and the MLTRC email. So again, just whoever you want to give preference to, and then CC the other two so we have a copy of that. And also what I wanted to mention before that even came up is that along the lines of you speaking with descendants, I know there was discussion earlier about the challenge of that because some people would be more open to discussing matters of this sensitivity than others. And if we could supply the commission, could you supply you with some kind of verbiage and or a letter and or something that might help you broach the challenging, I guess, bridge to, hi, I think we found evidence that means your great-great-granddaddy was a lyncher or your great-great-granddaddy was a lynch victim. And you're like, oh, boom, the door shuts or the phone hangs up. And I just wondered if you all have not found that of recent with the individuals that you've been discussing, or have we followed up, or do you still need that?
If I could answer that, I think our contact or attempted contact with descendants has been limited to people that we discover on Ancestry who are pursuing the same goals as we are. So we've had contact with them, and that the only issue we've had with them is responsiveness, but we haven't encountered any sensitivity or resentment. With the other people, for example, Emily Thomas, who I just mentioned, we have not attempted to make direct contact. We've used a variety of resources, online resources, to trace their lives, find out where they live. But I think we were cautioned until the commission makes some decisions that we didn't want to approach these people for the reasons that you cited. So it's been kind of a limited contact where we come across people who are pursuing the same research that we are, and we've not found any sensitivity. Correct me if I'm wrong, Donna, but we've found that people are not responsive as we would like them to be in many cases.
You're right.
And David, one last thing. We are having some technical issues ourselves that I don't even want to talk about, but you should have an updated report from us in the Excel format by the end of this week. That would include what I just described to you. That we've been having some unbelievable issues on the technical side, but you should have that by the end of this week. And I think you said you're meeting next week, so we'll make sure that you're well equipped.
Thank you. And I guess the other piece of that, to your and Chris's point, This committee, as well as our full commission and commission leadership, can help kind of determine strategy for reaching out. If there is a question of somebody's level of willingness to participate. I know there have been instances where we got commission leadership to sign a letter or to at least draft the language and have their name attached to it. So, the strategy might be different depending on who we're trying to connect with. So we'll just keep that in mind and keep that that possible step should there be questions about how to move forward, basically. And the other piece, for any members of the public or those that are newer to the process, identifying descendants either on the victim or perpetrator side is valuable for telling the whole story, but it also could be a contributing component to one of these public hearings that takes place in the community. I believe almost all of our hearings thus far have had, maybe one of them did not, but most have at least have had a descendant from one, if not both sides, have a speaking role, which is frankly one of the more powerful and impactful components of those hearings. Yeah, Donna.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that since there are only about 5 pages to the Wright Smith application, I'll scan all of it and send that in too.
Wonderful. And we are at 4:02, so I want to respect folks' time as we scheduled this for an hour. But again, thank you for being here. I have one piece of new business that I will just shout out fairly quickly, in that I am on an email list for Montgomery History, which is the local historical society. They're highlighting several events later this month that relate to that county's Commission on Remembrance and Reconciliation. They have a very strong local committee that's doing a lot of its own work around these commemorations. So there's going to be a marker dedication in Rockville on November 11th, a movie screening on November 15th, and then rebroadcast of some of those same events on November 21st on a local access TV there in their county. And those two cases in Montgomery County are John Diggs Dorsey and Sidney Randolph were the two victims that they are documenting. So I think that's something I can distribute to folks on the call by email, or you can also look that up if it's something that you would want to pursue attending. Either, I think they're mostly, some of it is in person and some maybe remotely accessible. So that is good things and information being shared out of Montgomery County. Any other new business from anyone on the call?
I actually just had a question. Is that okay? I was wondering, did we search specifically African American newspapers nationwide for reports? Yeah, okay. I was just wondering about that because I know a lot of mainstream papers, wouldn't necessarily cover these incidents, but African American newspapers often did. So I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we've been, I was nodding my head, not to say that we have done it exhaustively, but that's definitely a point that we've been trying to make. So, the obvious example locally is the Baltimore as well as the Washington Afro-American newspapers have been, incredible resources, even preceding the commission. But also, at least for myself, using Chronicling America on the Library of Congress page, I've been able to access a few other Black newspapers, and then some that don't have digital holdings. I believe it was the Washington Bee that a George Mason student went to the Washington, D.C. Public Library to access. So all that is to say, that's definitely a goal, but pointing us in the direction, or helping to facilitate finding other particularly digital collections would be wonderful, because we know that we need those perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So a full commission meeting will be next Monday at 11:30. Hope to see many of you there. And we've got a couple of follow-up points from this conversation today. But thank you so much. And again, reach out to Chris or I if you have any questions.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right, you too.